Kunjabihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Jai Mr. Paramahamsa, Parudikacharya Ashtotar Shishima. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Mr. Paramahamsa, Parudikacharya Ashtotar Shishima. His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Govinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Can I? You know how to work these mic thing in here? It's too loud. Have you seen the three on the left side? There's one that says main. And there's one that says questions. You got to move the questions down so it matches up with the main. So otherwise it's too loud. And I'm trying not to get up again. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. How are we doing back there, guys? Hari Bol, little less. Just move them all down. The ones on the left, the sliders. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol. Okay, better. That's good. Thank you. Okay. All right. You ready? Can you settle down? Oh. Well, do you want to make it the main? Because the main is burned out. The battery is out. Well, you probably did, but it's not working. All right. On this 25th day of September 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are on page 286 in the Dhyana Yoga chapter, text number 33. Arjuna Vacha Yoyam Yogastvaya Prokta Samyena Madhusudana Etasyaham Napashyami Chanchalatvat Stitim Stiram Yoyam Yogastvaya Prokta Samyena Madhusudana Etasyaham na pashyami chanchalotvat stitim stiram. Arjuna vacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta sammena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalotvat stitim stiram. Dhamraj, you want to try? Arjuna vacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta sammena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalotvat stitim stiram. Kanai, you want to try? Okay. Page 286. Go ahead, Marcy. Arjuna vacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta sammena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalotvat stitim stiram. Try it, can I? Arjuna vacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta. Not a problem. Okay. Go ahead, Ace, you're on. Arjuna vacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalotvat stitim stiram. Not yet? Not yet? Sorry. Arjuna vacha, Arjun said, Yak ayam, this system, yogaha, mysticism, tvaya, by you, proktaha, described, samyena, generally, madhusudana, O killer of the demon Madhu, etasya, of this, aham, I, na, do not, pashyami, see, chanchalatvat, due to being restless, stitim, situation, stiram, stable. Arjun said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Purport. The system of mysticism described by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, beginning with the words Shuchau Deshe and ending with Yogi Paramaha, is here being rejected by Arjuna out of a feeling of inability. It is not possible for an ordinary man to leave home and go to a secluded place in the mountains or jungles to practice yoga in this age of Kali. The present age is characterized by a bitter struggle for a life of short duration. People are not serious about self-realizations, even by simple practical means, and what to speak of this difficult yoga system, which regulates the mode of living, the manner of sitting, selection of place, and detachment of the mind from material engagements. As a practical man, Arjuna thought it was impossible to follow this system of yoga, even though he was favorably endowed in many ways. He belonged to the royal family and was highly elevated in terms of numerous qualities. He was a great warrior, he had great longevity, and above all, he was the most intimate friend of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 5,000 years ago, Arjuna had much better facilities than we do now, yet he refused to accept this system of yoga. In fact, we do not find any record in history of his practicing it at any time. Therefore, this system must be considered generally impossible in this age of Kali. Of course, it may be possible for some very few, rare men, but for the people in general, it is an impossible proposal. If this were so 5,000 years ago, yeah, have a seat. Maybe, okay, that's okay. 5,000 years ago, Arjuna had much better facilities than we do now. If this were so 5,000 years ago, then what of the present day? Those who are imitating this yoga system in different so-called schools and societies, although complacent, are certainly wasting their time. They are completely in ignorance of the desired goal. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya Chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Okay. So, Arjuna represents us. He's questioning Krishna. At the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, he was kind of put into illusion by Krishna. You know, it's a very dramatic scene. I mean, there's this huge battlefield with thousands of soldiers on each side, elephants, horses. It's this battle that's been building for many years in the Mahabharata, the great history, of which this Bhagavad Gita is a part, is about to begin. Arjuna is the main warrior on one side. He has his 4 brothers who are his main allies, and many others. And most importantly, he has Krishna on his side. And with all of this, when it comes time to actually start the battle, he gets cold feet. He's seeing all of his friends, relatives, his worshipable grandfather and teacher on the other side, and he just decides to, who cares? I don't want this kingdom. If I have to kill all my friends and relatives who are so dear to me, then whatever I so-called enjoy will be tainted with their blood. How can I enjoy it? You see? So he wants to leave the battlefield and go and just become a beggar, which is really impractical. But that's his solution. But in the end, he just kind of just collapses on he sits down, which means that he's not ready to fight, obviously, drops his bow, and is just trembling. He's paralyzed. So he asks Krishna to resolve his dilemma. He has the Supreme Personality of Godhead right there on the chariot, the Supreme Guru, the Adi Guru. So he surrenders to him and says, well, I made all these arguments why I don't want to fight, but I'm still torn, because my duty, I know, is to fight in this battle, to reinstitute Dharma in the world, in the person of his elder brother, Yudhishthira. That was Krishna's whole plan. Because people were suffering, there were so many demons running things just like we have today. And but Krishna periodically comes in order to solve that problem, in order to help us get Dharma back. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharat abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam sajamyaham. I think, did you learn that when you were a child? Every Hindu child learns that. Which means, whenever and wherever there is an upsurge of Dharma, an upsurge of adharma, irreligion, and Dharma has been eclipsed, I appear. Boy, I hope I have water. Yes. In order to protect the devotees, get rid of the demons, and reinstitute Dharma, I appear age after age. Now, he doesn't come as Krishna every age, but he comes through his representatives, especially through his book, is always available. And he has his great representatives, gurus, sadhus, who teach the same lesson. But in 5,000 years ago, he came himself, and one of the things he did was arrange for this Bhagavad Gita to be spoken. So the way he did it was he put Arjuna, his dear friend and most important warrior on the side of good, into illusion, so that he could then speak the Bhagavad Gita, and through Arjuna he could speak to all of us, because these principles are universal. We're also on a battlefield of life, and eventually each birth we're defeated. We die and we take birth again. But it's a hard struggle for existence, Prabhupada would call it, and it's undoubtedly true. So these instructions Krishna gives to us are invaluable, but they also have to be practical. So he's spoken this 6th chapter, what's called Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, the yoga that's quite kind of well known of meditation, sitting. Ashtanga means 8 limbs. It starts out with moral principles. It doesn't start out with bending and stretching. It starts out with yama and niyama. Yama are the don'ts and niyama are the do's. In any discipline, any material or spiritual, there's a set of do's and don'ts. Just like I learned to play the clarinet one time, when I was a kid. We didn't have much money. So at that time in America, public schools, they had a program of of kids could learn instruments. Right? Isn't that one of the Montessori things? Playing music, very important. It helps. They've done studies. If you have music in your life, you learn faster. Anyway, my father was a musician. My mother was like to sing. So it came time to third grade. What instrument are you going to choose? There are only 3 that are free. I didn't have a piano at home. Unfortunately, I would be playing a harmonium right now. But one was the trumpet, which I thought was too hard to blow. No way, Another was the violin, which I thought was a little sissy instrument for some reason. And the other was the clarinet, which is, okay, I'll take the clarinet, because I already knew how to play the recorder. So you can imagine when you first take that clarinet home and you start wailing, My parents didn't, obviously have earplugs in their ears, but they might as well have. So you have to get through that point of, not playing and making noise. In other words, it's a discipline. You have to get over that point. So eventually I was making music, So it's true for anything. No matter what you want to learn, any progress you want to make, it means there's a right way and a wrong way. There are teachers. There are often books or manuals if you want to learn how to repair a car or whatever. So that's what it means. Now it's true for spiritual life as well. And Krishna is giving not a exhaustive instruction here on. He's giving basic principles of karma yoga, jnana yoga, now dhyana yoga, and ultimately bhakti yoga. And the whole thing culminates in bhakti yoga. In fact, bhakti yoga has elements of karma yoga, jnana yoga, and dhyana yoga in it. And we'll explain that. Throughout this chapter, Prabhupada has brought in Krishna consciousness or bhakti yoga within every purport, even though it's about this Ashtanga yoga. Beginning with yama niyama, the don'ts and the do's, and then asana. You have to be able to sit. This whole thing is sitting and working on the mind. So he describes asana, and then there's pranayama, this regulation of the breathing, which anyone who's tried it, seriously, it does calm the mind. It really, helps to clear the mind, regulate. It's very healthy for you. I used to do a little of that. You probably do it all the time, every day. She's a yoga teacher. So, pranayama, okay, the mind is calm. Then the withdrawal of the senses from the sense objects. That's an internal process. In other words, we've got all of these ideas and all of these perceptions, and they reside within the mind. Like when you sleep, the dream, all kinds of desires come out, and you wake up and you realize it. If it's a good dream, maybe you want to go back to sleep. If it's a nightmare, you say, oh, God, I'm glad that wasn't real. You enter a different life, right? So that has to be withdrawn, and then you're ready to concentrate, not meditate yet, dharana. So you have niyama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, which means to not consume. Ajahara literally means to eat. So not consuming anything with your senses. You actually consume, subtle things, the sound and the sights and the things with the speak of the food. So you're withdrawing. You're sitting in a cave somewhere, working on the mind and all this stuff. And then, finally, you're ready to concentrate, dharana. And that's a process. The mind wanders, bring it back. Wanders, bring it back. Krishna mentions Shanai, Shanai, Upadamaid, bring it back. And what are you meditating on? That's the key. Krishna says, you're meditating on me within the heart. Now that form of Krishna in the heart is usually seen as the super soul with the 4 arms, standing there. And then, as it may take years to really work on it and get it right. And then dhyana. Then dharana, then dhyana. That's the actual meditation, where it's unbroken meditation, very, very sustained thought, and concentrated thought. And finally, samadhi. It may take lifetimes. And you're actually meditating, and there's absolutely no distraction. And he describes the benefits in chapters 20 to 23. Once achieving that, you're in a state of happiness and bliss, enjoying through transcendental senses. And once you get this state, you'll think there's no greater gain. You'll be completely steady even in the greatest difficulty like that. In other words, a very high state of consciousness. So, but then here we have the reality. Arjuna is representing us. Are you kidding? I have a job, I got to pay the rent. How am I going to do this yoga? It really isn't practical for the average person. It may be practical for very few. So this word chanchalatva is very important. it will be repeated in the next verse. The nature of the mind, it's very flickering. It goes here and there. Sometimes it's compared to a bee going to this blossom, that blossom, like that. Sometimes to a wild horse you can't control. It's, it wants to go or it wants to go. You can't forget something, some traumatic event or something, You can't get it out of your mind, PTSD. The mind can be very powerful. Let me see if I can remember this. Bhagavad. He compares comparing the mind to a horse, and the prayer is arising from material life. There are the horse of my mind is being whipped again and again, and I'm suffering. You see, please, O Madhava, this is the prayer to the Lord, to the Supreme Lord. Curb the horse of my mind with the reins of strong bhakti, and tie it to the lotus of your feet. In other words, tie it to the hitching post of your lotus feet, so it'll stay there. This is the advantage of the devotees, is that they take a very humble position. That I can't control this mind, but you're most powerful. You can do it. There's a beautiful song Rupa Goswami sings. Krishna Bhavandam Bande. This is the refrain. Says, O Krishna, dearest Lord, I bow to you and then entreat. Please place the bee of my restless mind in the honey of your lotus feet. So then, Rupa Goswami, he has this next verse, he's comparing, he said, look, Yadapi samadasha vidadapi pashita nandamanakaga medicham idamichami nisham mitabachita tatakupi pabadavicham. Which means, even Brahma, steeped in trance, cannot achieve his goal, a glimpse of your effulgent toenails soothing to the soul. Yet though it seems, I forget the poem, but it means that, but still, that is what I'm hoping for, a glimpse of your, that, because I've heard of your compassion's endless waves, that very vision is the only thing my poor heart craves. In other words, even though Brahma can't achieve it, I'm still praying to you for that vision of your lotus feet. O Krishna, dearest Lord, I bow to you and then entreat, please place the bee of my restless on your honey of lotus feet. Then he says, Bhaktirudanchadi yadyapi madhava, natvai mamati lamatri, padameshwadata tatabitabati kadurkata ghananabadatri. O Madhava, despite great effort, I have not attained a drop of pure devotion. This has brought me endless pain. Yet though it seems impossible to ever fill this need, your monumental power gives me hope I shall succeed. In other words, this is the strength of the devotee, is that he completely gives up trying to do anything on his own and prays for Krishna to give him the strength to do it. You see? In other words, this is the advantage of being Kali Yugites. If you understand how unqualified we are, that means that you can call out to Krishna in absolute desperation, feeling yourself lower than a blade of grass in the street. Which is really our position. And Krishna responds to that and gives you the power to do things that are completely impossible. Did I tell the story of Shaurabha coming? I don't know if I should tell that. I was just in Washington, D.C., and I met our old friend Shaurabha, who I don't know if anyone here remembers him. You remember him. And he told me the story again. I had heard it once, and I actually helped edit it up for a publication. But he gave a lot more details. Oh my God. A good 8 or 10 miracles. I'll just give you a little preface to this story. Some of you remember, maybe you remember, in the early 90s, there was this prolonged war in the former Yugoslavia. You remember that? Serbia and Bosnia and the whole thing. And this is where he lived. He lived in Bosnia. He grew up there. He went through all these difficulties as a young man, as a child. He became depressed. He was thinking of suicide. Then he went into the army and kind of got steadied out, like that. Anyway, I won't tell it now. If we have time later, but he went through the most amazing difficulties, ordeals, to get to a temple in Croatia and actually join the Hare Krishna movement. You know, we take it for granted. Hare Krishna temple, it's always been here. You can come here, see the deities, you know. But in the war zone there was no temples in Bosnia. The closest temple was in Croatia. And there's like a war field in between. And how is he going to get to it? So, we'll tell this story later. But, so, we'll have time. We'll have time. You'll see. We have plenty of time. So anyway, Krishna, Arjuna is representing us. And let me finish the song. So he prays, I've not developed a drop of devotion, but because of your power, I have hope. You're so powerful, you can give me that devotion. And the last verse, he says, I am a balod that the yada sanatan kaladabudurasapadam, nivasajinitya mahamadinindanibandan mododimasadam. Today, O Lord, eternal Lord, my mind is fixed upon your feet, and so I'm tasting endless mellows, wonderful and sweet. I pray that for eternity my mind may there reside to relish luscious honey that defeats ambrosia's pride. Something like that. So this is the course of the sincere devotee. You realize your helplessness, and all you have is your faith and your willingness to pray ardently from the heart. And that is the advantage of being Kali Yugites. Because you live in a previous age, I'm living for 1,000 years, you know. I'm a qualified Brahmin, you know, and all of the different things. You live on a heavenly planet. There's so many, you know, there's the facilities for sense gratification are millions of times greater. What's the urgency to practice Krishna consciousness? You see the problem. But here we're beset, you know, we don't live very long. It's such a dangerous. Once you understand the reality of Krishna consciousness and the availability of it and the necessity of it, then you can become inspired to actually try to attain it. And it's all a question of just the quality of your prayer, the quality of your chanting. And this one verse by Queen Kunti, she's a great devotee of Krishna. She's the mother of the Pandavas, mother of Arjuna. She went through all the ordeals. When Krishna, the war is over, now the war hasn't started yet. Once the war is over, Pandavas have won, Yudhishthira is on the throne. Then Krishna wants to leave and go back to Dwarka. He's at their capital, Indraprastha or Hastinapur. So there's this wonderful scene, chapter 8 of the first canto, where Queen Kunti and others are there, but she's featured, and she offers her prayers to Krishna. And one of the prayers goes like this: Janmaishwarya Shuta Shibir Edamana Madakpuman Naibar Hattabidhatam Dvaitrama Kinchana Gocharam. And what she's saying there, my dear Lord, your Lordship is easily approachable, but only by those who are materially exhausted, those who are too much covetous of these four basic opulences of good birth and education and wealth and physical beauty. They can't call out to you with deep feeling. In other words, you may have those opulences, but if you try to enjoy them and you become absorbed in increasing them or, you know, using them, then you may chant Hare Krishna, but you can't chant from the heart. This verse is very important. How to chant sincerely. That's Lord Chaitanya's whole movement. Anyone can chant, and it's beneficial no matter what you do, what's your situation. But to really achieve the goal of the chanting, which is right here described, once you're, a state of happiness that's inconceivable now, and doesn't end, because it's not based on something material, that we have to learn how to chant properly. So, Arjuna is rejecting this, and the next verse he'll explain even more why. And then we'll do this first, and then I'll tell that story. 34. This very famous verse. Chanchalam himana Krishna Pramati balavadridham Tasyaham nigraham manye Vayor eva sudushkaram. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Purport. The mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence, although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, one may establish a mental equilibrium toward both friend and enemy, but ultimately no worldly man can do so. for this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind. In the Vedic literature, the Katha Upanishad 1:3-4, it is said, Atmanam ratinam vidhi sharidam ratamevacha buddhim tu saratim vidhi manak pragraham evacha indriyani hayanahu vishayangs teshu gocharan atmendriya mano yuktam bhoktet yahu manishinaha. Now, there's an illustration of this. You all have the color section in the middle. And you'll find, not that, but, where is that horse? Oh yeah, there it is. Plate 9. See those horses? Yeah, that's what he's illustrating here. So I'll read the translation. You can look at that picture. The individual is the passenger in the car of the material body, and intelligence is the driver. Mind is the driving instrument, that means the reins, and the senses are the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So it is understood by great thinkers. So you can see when the senses are out of control, they're pulling the mind can't control them, and the intelligence is being controlled by the mind, which is being controlled by the senses, and that poor soul in the back there is so scared that he's completely white, and that's the situation. Now, there's another painting where you're going down a mountain path, and the horses are, it's even more dangerous. And that's the situation that mostly we have. It's described at the end of the 3rd chapter. How the mind, intelligence, and senses, when they are saturated with material desire, which is a normal thing in the modes of nature, then the lower self controls the higher self. The higher self is the soul, and ultimately the super soul, which we're not accessing now. And that soul is simply riding on this chariot of the body, but he is being victimized. You're being victimized by all of these, the senses and the mind like that. The higher self is meant to control the lower self. And so the higher self, the intelligence, needs to be strengthened by hearing Shastra and by hearing the words of the spiritual preceptor. And then we can get things straight. Otherwise, life after life will be victimized by the lust-saturated mind, senses, and intelligence. That's described at the end of the 3rd chapter. Intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's own intelligence, as an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind. And it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Harekrishna, the great mantra for deliverance in all humility. The method prescribed is Savaimana Krishna Padada Vindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna, Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. So really quickly now, it all comes down to this great gift, this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Because Krishna is by nature all attractive. The problem now, we can't perceive him, so we're not being attracted by him. We're being attracted by his energies. But that indirect attraction doesn't help us. We need to be directly attracted to Krishna as a person. So he very mercifully appears as Lord Chaitanya to teach us this simple process of connecting with him through sound, through the sound of his name. This sound, Krishna, there's a beautiful verse about the holy name, so many wonderful verses. It says, Nama Chintamani Krishnas, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. You know this one? Purnak Shaddho Nitya Mukto Abhinatvan Nama Namino. So the holy name is like Chintamani. Now Chintamani is a spiritual gem that is Prabhupada uses this term like a philosopher's stone. It turns anything to gold, So this Chintamani, not on the seat where people sit, is a spiritual gem. In the spiritual world, the ground is made of Chintamani. So the idea is that will transform your consciousness just by touching it with your mind, by vibrating and hearing. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Now Chaitanya means consciousness, spiritual. Rasa is mellow, is a relationship we have with God. Vigraha, it's the very form that can of the element that can give you, reveal to you your relationship with Krishna. We all have it, but we don't know what it is exactly. So it's powerful. Purna, Purna means complete. It is a complete process of yoga. If you perfect the process of chanting Hare Krishna, you perfect your life. You leave this world, don't come back, go back to the spiritual world for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So Purna, Shuddho, pure and purifying. It's the purest of the pure, and it purifies us of what? Of lust, anger, greed, illusion, depression, fear. All of those things are superfluous to the soul. Shuddho, Nitya Mukto, eternally liberated, never contaminated, never of this world. And why is all this? Because, and here's the kind of the important punchline, Abhinadvanamanamino, the name is non-different from the named. In other words, Krishna himself has invested his name with all of his energies, and we can contact him through that name. Now, the quality of the chanting is so important, but if you chant even in the most ignorant frame of mind, it'll still be extremely beneficial. And the idea is, if you keep chanting and you try to avoid distractions, there's a science and art to it, then you'll eventually chant purely. And you come to this state like Rupa Goswami. You know, he's our great acharya, one of the great Goswamis of the Middle Ages, 500 years ago. And he describes in his Vidagdha Madhava play, Tunde tandabanira tingvatanute tundavadi labdhaye karna kroda kadambani kadayate karnabute vyakspiham chetak prangana sangini vijayate sarvendriyanam kritim no jane janitaki yadbidamitai krishneti varnadvahi. Those last syllables means the two syllables Krishna. So the whole verse means, I don't know how much nectar these two syllables Krishna have produced. When I chant them, they seem to dance within my mouth. I want to have millions of mouths to taste the nectar of this name. When they enter the ears, they seem to sprout, and I want to have millions of ears to hear that wonderful nectarian sound. And when they enter the courtyard of the heart, they completely take over the mind, and all the senses become inert, and I become fixed on Krishna. Lord Chaitanya heard this verse, he started dancing in ecstasy, and Haridas Thakur, you know. It's a very wonderful. This is the standard of chanting in purity. It's just the sweetest of the sweet, you know. It's such a wonderful thing. It's like we're going here and there to try to enjoy, you know. But we have the facility for enjoyment completely within us. These Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they were as poverty-stricken as it is possible to be. All they had for clothes were a little loincloth and something. Had no home. They would live under a tree each night. Hardly ate. They would beg a little something here and there. Hardly slept. They would be writing all day and meeting with each other. And so, you know, can you imagine a more austere kind of life? And yet it says, Gopi Bhavada Samratabdalahari Kallola Magno Moho. Again and again, they're diving into the ocean of nectar of the highest levels of love of God and experiencing all of these varieties of pleasure. So we have that reservoir of pleasure within us. We just need to learn how to contact it. And it all begins with this chanting and purification. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and tell the story of Sarabha, the saga of Sarabha. So I hope I remember the details here. So he grew up in Bosnia. So you've got Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Croatia. And I think Bosnia, Serbian was Christian. There was this whole thing where the Muslims came 500 years ago, and so there was ill will. And when the Yugoslavia broke up into different pieces, there was this war that developed. It went on for years. The Serbians were fighting the Croats, and in between the Bosnians, and it was like this whole thing. So this is how he grows up. And eventually, in the early 90s, it really got bad. And he was a young man, and he describes, he was confused about life, and he got depressed, and these thoughts of suicide. But he went into the army and kind of straightened up a little bit. Came out, and there was all of this searching for spiritual things. TM had arrived. He started doing TM, Transcendental Meditation. Everyone's heard of that, right? So he's doing that. And he has a friend who's also doing it. And so every so often he comes in touch with the Hare Krishnas, but his friend warns him, no, that's a cult. So several times he was warned away. So eventually he describes how he got out of the army, and then he went to a friend's house, and the friend had 2 rooms. One was he living in and cooking, and the other one was full of books. This is part of the Soviet, the Eastern Bloc, So to have books was like a great opulence. He had all these spiritual books. And so Sarabha would hang out there and read this. Finally he read the Bhagavad Gita, his friend trying to warn him off again. That's a Hare Krishna book, but he got into it, and he said, oh, this is for me, Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, sorry. You can put it over here. Or you can put it on one of these things. Yeah. So he's reading the Bhagavad Gita, and he's getting really fired up. He says, this is it. And he met some devotees, got some beads, started chanting. So eventually he reads this, he wants to go to Croatia because that's where the temples are. There's no temples in Bosnia. It's too dangerous. But Croatia, there's several temples of Hare Krishna. So he wants to go there, but everyone says, you can't go. The war is going between here and there. All the fighting. Wait. So he waits. Finally, he said, he can't wait anymore. He read this one phrase. Some of you may know it. Rake Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Rake Ke, which is a little phrase which means, if Krishna wants to protect you, no one can kill you. And if Krishna wants to kill you, no one can protect you. So that was one of his meditations, And meanwhile, he's chanting, more than 16 rounds. So finally he says, I'm going, He has this simple ID which, that he shaves up and everything as a Hare Krishna. And he had the ID, but the ID wasn't shaved up, so it didn't look too much like him, but that's all he had. So he goes off. It's not actually a backpack. I thought he had a backpack. It's more like some kind of side bag that he carried, with his clothes in it and a change of clothes and some toiletries like that. And off he goes, and his Bhagavad Gita. So everyone said, you can't go. But he said, I'm going, because Krishna will protect me. And he's chanting, Hare Krishna, constantly. So he's walking. He doesn't know. No one will drive. He's just walking alone. There's nobody around because it's too dangerous. So he describes at first, comes into the night, and he comes to this one town, and there's fires everywhere, and the whole town has been bombed out. And he doesn't see any people, which is good because there's no corpses. He found out later that whoever was alive, they were hiding in their cellars, and invisibly, trying to survive the whole thing. So he's walking. Eventually he comes to this farming area, and there's a corral kind of, and there's a cow and a calf in there. But they're crying. He sees the tears coming because there's a big bale of hay, but it's all burning. They have nothing to eat. It's on fire. So he's very moved by that, and he calls out to see if anyone's there. Is anyone home? Anyone around? Next thing he hears, and remember he was in the army, he hears click, click, and he knows what it is. It's a rifle with someone getting the round into the chamber ready to fire. So he's looking, and he sees, it's dark, and then he sees someone's firing at him, and he didn't have time to react. Basically, he's chanting, and it's a machine gun, and the bullets are all coming around him. They're hitting off stones and everything, and not one of them hits him. That's the first miracle. So naturally, then he comes out and starts running, and the guy's shooting, and bullets are going here and here and here, and somehow he escaped unscathed. Miracle number 1. So he describes in his other, he ran for 15 minutes, and finally, am I still alive? And he checked everything was intact. So he keeps walking. Eventually, he comes to another burned out area, and he hears click, click, plus, halt. In other words, stop or I'll shoot you. So he stops. And the guy, it's a soldier. He wants to know, who are you? What are you doing here? Like that, So this is where his strength comes in, because he is completely calm. Normally, everyone's freaked out at this point. They're trembling and praying, please don't hurt me, on their knees or whatever. And Sabra's just standing there chanting. It says, who are you? I'm just a spirit soul. I'm a pilgrim. I won't, I'm completely harmless. I'm not so. And so, kind of, this discombobulated the guy. And then another soldier comes, and he's like the commander. He's, not going to take any guff. So he says, get down on the ground. So Sarabha is down on the ground, face down, chanting, still chanting. And this I hadn't heard before. I'm hearing this story. Sarabha's telling me, like right across this picnic table where we're having prasadam, So then he said, stop that chanting. And he won't chant, he won't stop, because he knows he has to keep going. He read in the Bhagavad Gita, you keep chanting. So he's got the gun muzzle on his cheek, and he says, stop. And he says, no, Hare Krishna. So the guy stands up, he points the gun point blank, and he pulls the trigger. And the gun explodes, the bullet goes. But it hits that bag that he was carrying, and somehow was deflected, didn't hit Sarabha, hit a little stone, and went right past the ear of the other soldier. And so now the guy is freaking out and arguing with the first guy, they're having a big fight. You almost killed me. So while that's going on, a third guy comes, and he's the commander. There's actually a whole platoon around there. So that now they want to question him. So they get him up and they, why are you here? What's your mission? Because they think he must be a soldier, some saboteur or something. And he says, we can kill you at any time, or torture you. We can do whatever we want. So Sarabha, he says, this was really amazing, because he knew that if the guy did that, it would be bad karma for him. As far as himself, he was confident Krishna was going to protect him. He was completely confident. That was the whole point. So he said, if you do that, that will be very bad for you. Bad for me? Bad for you? What about bad for me? No, bad for you. So everyone's getting like, who is this guy, So then he describes this scene where apparently this is a group of soldiers who go out at night, with black clothes and knives, and go and assassinate people that way, so they don't have any guns. So there's all this big array of all of these fierce-looking guys with their big knives, and the one guy is questioning him, what's your mission? What's your mission? He says, I'm just a simple pilgrim, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, So eventually they call up. They trace, they make a phone call to find out if he's telling the truth about what his parents are and his name and everything, So it all checks out, and he's the same religion as them and everything. The only problem is he's wearing a green hat, which somehow was some part of a signal that he's a Muslim. I'd never heard that part before. So this one guy who called up and found out his mother's name was Serbian, and so he was ready to, finish him. So now it's nighttime, and Sarabha's in his own little room, and this guy comes alone, and starts threatening him. And so Sarabha is completely calm, but the guy is like working himself up, and so he's got this little picture of Krishna. It's a picture of sitting in the forest with a cow, and Krishna looks a little bit feminine there, So he shows him the picture, and it softens the guy up. He says, "Oh, she looks so beautiful," and you can see that it's God. This is God. So the guy's heart completely changes, and Sarabha is saved again. Anyway, we are running out. All right, a couple of minutes. So anyway, then they make friends with him, and they say, "Okay, tomorrow we're going to drive you to the border of Croatia, but before that, we have to go through the forest, and there's 3 checkpoints. If you can pass those checkpoints, we'll know that you're, protected by God, So he gets in the car in the back next morning. You know the story. And the 2 drivers are in the front. They all have their papers in order, So they come to the first checkpoint, and they show their papers, and they say, yeah, we're clearing mines and stuff, And so Sarabha's in the back, chanting loudly, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Because he has no papers really. He has this an ID that doesn't look like him, So the guy looks, and he says, "Oh, get out of here," So he drives off. The second checkpoint, they don't even stop the car, which never happens. That in itself is a miracle. The guys in the front are freaking out, Third checkpoint is the same as the first checkpoint. So finally they get there. He says, "Good luck." They let him out at this town that's right on the border of Croatia, and he seemed to be home free. So he's hungry. So he goes, gets some fruit, and offers it on a bench in a park. He's kneeling down, he's got this picture of Krishna and everything. And he's making the offering. A couple of cops come. By this time, Sharaba feels he's, invincible. So he says to the cops, "Wait a minute, I'm making an offering, okay?" And they wait. When do the cops wait for you? So they wait. So he's finished with the offering. And he gets up and he says, "Oh, show us your ID." So he shows him the ID. It doesn't look like him. He's got all this hair and everything, This doesn't look like you. We're arresting you. So they take him back to the third checkpoint with the strong instructions that he should be shipped back to the original town that he came from. And meanwhile, Krishna is saying, he's saying to Krishna, "You're sending me all the way back, Krishna? Well, if that's what you want to do, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna." So he's sitting with this guy waiting for the car to take him back, and he realized, "Oh, I got this prasadam. It's powerful." So he offers the guy some fruit, maha fruit. And he says, "Okay." So he takes an orange and a pear, whatever it is. And the magic works again. It completely softens the guy's heart. He says, "I don't want to send you back, just go." So he goes to the town. It turns out he has a relative living there in that town, who a family, and the man is in the military. So he needs ID to get into Croatia. So he creates an ID for him. He's got connections, and he walks into Croatia and he joined the temple. And then 8 years later, he came to L.A. with Mahatattva, and that's how he came down here. Shouldn't it be a book with illustrations? Huh? All glories to Prabhupada. Haribo. These things are like faith building, because really he was in a state where he was completely relying on Krishna, and Krishna protected him.